with Palantir, and I want to start this time with Shabari. I know you come at it from a different angle, from a technical expertise, and a lot of your videos are around the technology
Yeah.
and competitors and what you've seen and what makes them special. So I would just maybe like to hear your take on that, because I think it's a unique flavor I haven't seen before on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be honest, like I'll try to keep it as cut and dry as possible because it really is. When it comes to a company like Palantir, a lot of folks don't understand it. Doesn't mean I do either. I'm just coming at it from an angle that's coming from an engineer side of things, right? The thing is with Palantir, because it's a little bit murky, and some of it isn't, right? Their YouTube content is pushing out. They have some good stuff, promotional content and all this stuff. And they actually preview, unlike a lot of other companies, they actually, and you would know, Don, right? Like you're in marketing and stuff. You've seen it before. A lot of companies, when they put out content, it's very staged or it's some kind of like a, weird demo or whatever. But when Palantir pushes out any clips, it's their actual product, right? So you can get a good glimpse. And if you've either built or worked in that kind of ecosystem, you can see what they're kind of do just from a small feature perspective. Of course, you won't know 100%, but it gives you a good glimpse as to like a window into the potential feature set that they're presenting, right? And the thing is, there's a lot of misconceptions around Palantir, but the thing is, half of it I think is mainly just driven by the fact that people are looking at it from the lens of other companies, right? So you can't. The reason why I'm bullish on it is just because of the fact that it's not exactly, they're following a completely unique business model, to a point where people are calling it a consultancy or whatever, right? Which is just ridiculous, right? And we all know that, but it just sounds funny. So that's why I'm trying to demystify some of that stuff. But from a technical angle, they're addressing problems that we actually have, we're not even like anticipating right now. A lot of their offerings are sort of like big and bulky, right? But they operate in a complete sort of high efficiency mode. Anything like that in the market that's a massive monolith of a product is like a huge undertaking to onboard. It's a huge undertaking to start integrating with your developers and your engineers on your side. Like you're talking like at least 2 quarters of just integration work, right? Whereas Palantir is like, yeah, you know what? We'll send one guy. It'll give us like 6 weeks and you get to go, right? So it's like it's people just don't realize that. They think it's just a stonk, and stonks always go up, and they kind of get into it. But especially with this company, I would encourage people to look into their videos. Forget like any of ours. Look into their videos. If you have any sort of tech background, you'll be able to see it. If not, then feel free to look at some of our videos and get some background. But just do research is what I'm saying, right? So like the more you do research with Palantir, the better position you'll be, and the more you'll understand it. Because even to this point, a lot of folks don't fully get the company, and I get it. It's their commercial side of it is fairly new, but as we progress, we'll definitely get more and more info. As we move on.
Oh, that was very, very well said. We'll go to Jake next, then go to Chris, because I want to hear everyone's take on this. So Jake, I know that things started with Tesla with you, and you noticed there were some similar business models or leadership and qualities of those two companies. Maybe you can just share not only just why you invest, but what excites you now, right? We're sitting at 1646, something like that in after hours. What excites you now about the company and leaves you unshaken?
Yeah, I think the definitely the leadership's willingness to really push forward with not necessarily what the customer wants, but what they don't know, they don't know what they want. That's very similar with most really innovative companies. That if you're listening to your customer tell you, hey, can you build this for me, or I want this or that. Um, you're probably not going to have the most successful product. And Carp says all the time, we're building products 5 years before the industry knows they need them. They were talking about pandemics, 5 6 years ago. You go watch videos on YouTube of Palantir talking about contact tracing and things like that for pandemics, or working with vaccines for distribution a long time ago, because you know they as a company they realize that issues with siloed data and disparate data sources are only going to get harder. And I think seeing them keep like doubling down, pressing forward with really developing solutions, and making them more and more scalable. I mean, people. That's one of the big criticisms of Palantir is it's not going to scale. It's a consultancy type of company. Well, they have really good margins for a consultancy company, and that's only going to get better. So the more automatic they make things with integrating more small, medium-sized businesses and integrating even those larger businesses with maybe just one engineer, the better those margins are going to get. And Apollo and HyperAuto really pushing that forward is like, I mean, people have no idea how big this can get. And granted, the best product does not always win, but I'd rather focus on the company with the best product and the best aims, the best goals. Their growth disappointed, I think, last quarter, but if you look at their U.S. commercial growth, it's up around 100% for the last like 3 or 4 quarters. That's gonna really push their growth in the future, and yeah, so that scalability and those margins. I mean, I'm just blown away by what people are missing about Palantir.
So two so far we've heard speak that the market doesn't understand the company. A lot of people say they can't figure out the company. So they make enough information out there for you to figure it out. So I think we can all agree on that. Chris, what is your take on the company?
So, as someone has dealt with in the past in working with management to do procurement, to do all sorts of things, I can tell you the current system is ripe for disruption. We've got so many softwares that are not exactly purpose built. And literally, if they are, they're cookie cutter. So, like, it's just like a one size fits all kind of situation. You won't believe how many legacy technologies are still being used by commercial clients that, they were something that they used almost 20 years ago. But what happened is one of the bigger companies bought them, integrated into their software stack, and said, "Here you go. Now you have a new product." And it's like, no, you're just taking a whole bunch of products from 20 years ago, putting them together and saying, "Here you go. This is a new product." And no, it's like, I don't know if you guys ever saw the Big Short with the seafood stew. So that's the thing. They're just taking old stuff, recycling it, and giving it back to you, saying we have this great new product. And what I like about Palantir is they're saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to repackage shit. We're going to actually figure out a way to make everything interoperable, but then also at the same time let you as the user become a data analyst and actually work on actually operationalizing everything that you're seeing. And I know that sounds weird, but it's almost like you want to have things that are more plug and play, where you don't have to hire a team of data scientists to give you information. I'll give you one example of something that I used to work in. I used to work in procurement in radiology. I was filling in for somebody at the hospital where I was. And I remember when I first started, I was like, okay, what's my budget for the year? Like, if I'm going to be ordering all these things, what's my budget? And they said to me, well, we don't know. Just order it. And, if it gets rejected, that's your budget. That's how you know. And I was like, there's no way. Like, you got to you got to tell me like how much money I have. They're like, well, it'd be too complicated to figure that out. There's too much information. I said, so what's the point of this system, this software that you have that I'm supposed to be ordering stuff from, if you can't even tell me what I'm, how much money I have to spend? So that was problem number one. And then like a week later, I'm like, okay, well, I need to order some stuff. And I log into the system and, there's something called a catalog item and a special request. So catalog items are things that you've already negotiated pricing for, and you're going to order it on the system. And, it's very easy. You click on it, and then it gets ordered, and then it automatically goes to a vendor. The vendor sends the product to you. Lo and behold, the person who actually put all this stuff in there didn't know what the hell they were doing. So anytime you would order something, it would come in wrong. The wrong product will come in. You would think that, and you won't believe, a lot of people think that like when you're working in procurement, it's like Amazon, where you just go to it and the product that you ordered is actually the product that shows up. I can tell you, especially in the medical field, That is not how it is sometimes. And it's weird because some of the devices and some of the products that you order are so like so similar, but at the same time, the smallest thing can provide a vast level of difference. And so I still remember I hated that stupid thing. And I was like, after about a month, I was like, I'm not doing this. You got to hire someone. I'm not filling in for this anymore. That's how frustrated I got. I tried to do everything I could to analyze a lot of their data to come up with, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll create my own budget based on last year, what they ended up ordering. And literally, I had to reach out to 10 different people. They ended up having to go to like the data warehouse and they just sent me the spreadsheet with like every cost center we had. And I was like, there's no way that like I can filter through all this stuff. And that's the key. So I see Palantir saying, you know what? We're going to build something where everyone can become really good at their job, right? We're going to give them that information at the ground level, so you can have someone who's filling in a role and let them end up becoming almost like a data analyst. You don't have to rely on a team of people building things just to get one piece of information to let you do your job. If Palantir has figured out a way to just make that easier, that's huge and that's really disruptive. I don't know if you guys have ever had to deal with procurement, but it's a pain. But it's a pain, dude. It's a pain.
Yeah, no, that's why I was laughing. And I think we've all hit on some key fundamentals. I'll kind of summarize it with some bullet points and we'll jump into this presentation on HyperAuto really quick. Data is not getting used effectively in the industry. We can all agree on that, especially in the enterprise. There's so much data growing and it's only going to continue to exponentially grow in the next couple of years and continue on. So as Jacob hit earlier, the problem will only compound. And so they're trying to solve this, and without having, as you both said, a team of developers and data scientists and everything else. But what they are actually providing is a no code, or in some cases, low code solution that is point click, that Janine in accounting, who's never done any development at all, can actually use this platform to make informed decisions on her purchase orders, on her budget, and see in a digital twin, a simulation of, if I make these decisions, then all of a sudden, this is the repercussions that are going to happen for the entire business. And this is how it impacts sales, our executives, all the different departments, right? Manufacturing. And so what that is selling time to value, because everybody in every industry, profit, nonprofit, government, needs time to value. And we live in such a fast-paced world where data is growing faster, demands are growing faster than what we can keep up with. We don't even have enough cybersecurity experts or data scientists and AI scientists to support the needs and requests and demands that are out there today. Hence why robotic process automation and AI is so on demand, right? How do we automate this? How do we make it simpler? And so they've foreseen these problems, as you were saying, and now they're modularizing it, right? Oh, there's a problem for ERP and CRM systems. So we're going to talk about that here in a second with HyperAuto. There's carbon footprint. Everyone's complaining about going green, and how do I prove it? Then there's manufacturing and supply chain and actual shipyards, which they just signed the big deal with Hyundai, and moving into South Korea. And then, of course, there's therapeutics and biotech, which is a massive industry for disruption when you think about 90% of drugs fail, right? The drug discovery process is not efficient. So all great commentary. And I think you guys hit on a lot of good points. So I wanted to get your guys' take on HyperAuto. Have any of you guys looked at HyperAuto at all and some of the literature that they have?
Yeah, I mean, my deep dive into HyperAuto, basically it's something that they understood that they were sending a bunch of people having to do all this work just to get on a company onboarded onto Foundry. They said, you know what? We can actually consolidate this. We don't need to keep sending deployed engineers to do this. It's just not scalable. So how are you going to make something more scalable? Well, this is the way. You have an automated process that you can just kind of put in, and the system will recognize all this stuff based on the ERP or CRM that they've worked on in the past. So when you do all that stuff, yes, the initial part in terms of doing the development may be a little rough, and there's probably took some time, but they figured it out. And now if a company wants to be onboarded, it doesn't take 5 engineers in 3 months. It just takes one weekend with one engineer. At least that's what I understood.
Yep, you're spot on. And the other piece to that is Apollo, and maybe Jake, you can talk on this, is making it easier to do that deployment, to do those updates. So they are having this faster time value, because the big hangup was it takes 6 months for Palantir to be deployed, for it engineers, everything else. That changed about, like, I don't know, almost a year ago, right now with Apollo's release and everything else. And we're seeing use cases, which we'll actually walk through here, where companies are saving millions of dollars within weeks. I don't know companies that can claim that and back it up with an actual proof of ROI within that short amount of time. Jake, what's your experience with HyperAuto and kind of what you've seen and researched on it?
Yeah, very similar to Chris. When the engineers spoke about it when they released it, it was they kept seeing the same CRM and ERP software over and over again, and rather than kind of onboarding new clients and kind of hand jamming the same programs onto Foundry, they developed HyperAuto to do it automatically, and so it just kind of accelerates the onboarding process for them, alleviates some of the manpower that goes into that, and reduces gross margin. It's basically the biggest takeaway from HyperAuto, and you know what, it'll only get better as they improve those kinds of capabilities too. I mean, they've proved that they can pivot very quickly. They can develop these types of things very quickly. I mean, since the DPO, they've come out with Apollo for Edge AI, HyperAuto, Foundry for crypto. And so as they are introduced to a wider array of CRM programs, it'll just be like this vacuum of incorporating them together into a larger ontology for any company they come across.
No, you're nailed it, right? And keep going back to the things of time to value. And Shabari, you can comment on this of what it's like in your shoes as a developer in DevOps, to explain to the audience what time to value does for a developer, or even just the business outcome on a project that's budgeted. What does that do? What are the discussions there when a negotiation on an app is, we need this in 10 weeks, right? Here's the budget.
Yeah. Time is huge, especially when you get down to the developer side of it. You're passing like so much stuff, right? You're going through the business process, you're going through procurement, you're going through, any provisioning, all that stuff, and then it gets down to the technical level. So I think the value is even before the dev side. Like the way they onboard, it's almost like you're skipping steps a little bit, right? So then when you finally get to it, you don't even need any extra integration work. Typically when you get these kind of projects in scope, you sit in like meeting rooms with the other, for example, if you get a company come in, you sit in with their lead engineer or whoever, and you kind of, it's almost like a like like one of those like good cop bad cop type routines where you're like, okay, what can you do? And they're like, kind of this, kind of that. It's very vague. But then when you finally get into it, you're mostly like 2-3 weeks in, you're finally talking about APIs. There's like so much manual work. And then that's part of the reason why it takes so long for you to onboard software. It's not that the software itself sucks. It's just what you need for these things to get going. It's like you need a lot of hand holding, right? And part of that is because, and this is another thing, right? Part of that is because all these companies, their competitors and so-called competitors, are making software that is very narrow. Like they're like, okay, what is the most common problem in the industry? So if it's CRM, what is the most common problem that we can address with a CRM solution? Okay, now let's attack that. Of course, every different company will have different types of solutions, and they'll share that problem, but they'll have other small nuances, right? And that's where this professional services and consulting side comes in, and that's where the other companies make money. Whereas Palantir is like, you know what, screw it, we're just going to give you an entirely fully built, feature complete product. Do with it what you will. It's totally, like skip so many steps that you don't need to worry about the developers and the integration as much as you think you do, to a point where you can get it running. And the decisions that actually at the end of all of this is just somebody making a decision, right? That's the thing that gets lost in all of these conversations. At the end of this whole process, someone's actually sitting there and using all of these pipeline related data content to actually make and execute some kind of a decision. For some companies, this decision could be life and death, like if it is healthcare, right? So at the end of the day, like, all of this time is wasted on salary, it's wasted on operational costs, it's wasted on so many different things. So it's not just a matter of time, it's more so like time, money, there's so many things come into play. So by them offering such a feature rich and complete product, you're skipping so many steps. The person who's actually getting the the final sort of step is able to make that decision pretty confidently, actually, because you're getting quality content, quality insights, and all this stuff coming down. And on top of that, you're saving so much time. It's almost like a dream come true, right? If you really, maybe that's why sometimes people are like, "What? That can't be real," right? So, but yeah, from a technical perspective, it's easy. We don't want to do this. It in a way, it's like, you people are like, "Oh, it's going to take our jobs." No, no, no. It's going to make it easier, right? Because the reality of it is, you don't want to be writing integrations. Then what you're doing is you're basically just making yourself more fireable. Because half the time when you make these integrations and stuff, they switch up an API on you or version on you once, and then you have to go back to this process all over again, right? Then it becomes who proposed the software, who wrote the API, or are they still in the company? And there's so much operational and maintenance work. It's just it's not, it's pointless. It's very antiquated. This is the new way of doing it. They come and they integrate, and you basically work within their sort of like workspace and optimize from there. So yeah, low code, no code is the way to go.
Yep. And it's an industry that is going, the projections are extremely high for the growth rate for low code, no code. There's companies out there who do, like you said, very specific niche, low code, no code type of things out there. But what this is an operating system. This is touching every part of your business, like you guys said. So let's explore how they've modularized. And is my screen sharing here? Can you see the HyperAuto screen? Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're modularizing Foundry, which is their commercial product for anyone who doesn't know, and they're solving specific problems that are of large scale, that are critical, and that will be able to be modularized to say, hey, here's your solution for solving CRM and ERP solutions and unification of those data systems, right? And then you're allowed to build on top of this operating system, so you can then, all your stuff you have now is not in vain. You can utilize what you have, but it's unifying them. So this is their description of Palantir HyperAuto. You actually can download the white paper once you sign up as a potential customer. ERP and CRM systems are the central pillars of many business data architectures, spanning companies of all sizes, industries, and geographies. So we kind of talked about this, right? This is a platform that is the core part of every business. Almost every business now has a CRM, customer relationship management tool, to keep track of their customers, orders, order processing, which Chris talked about earlier. And then we talk about the ERP systems, which are the software systems that are the function of the business. Shabari, you just talked about this. Moreover, real-world business decisions often require ERP and CRM data to be integrated either with each other or with data outside these systems. This again requires labor and time intensive work if it can be done at all. Right. So they're laying out the problem here. So then we move forward, and now they're talking about how is it powered? Well, it's powered by the software defined data integration. The SDDI is their technology. It's a solution that connects to and integrates the data from ERP and CRM systems automatically. That's the key word. Automatically. Automation. Think automation, lower cost, faster decisions, enabling insights in hours, not months. Once integrated, end users from across the organization can utilize ERP and CRM data to power custom workflows and analytics. Best of all, the solution enables seamless write back, feeding operational insights back into the underlying systems to power more impact. That's exactly what Jake said. Jake said, I can understand the business and the workflows and how this impacts it all, right? And then we see here, they're talking about specifically different versions of HyperAuto for different CRMs. So not only have they made this for the CRM integrations, but they have it for Salesforce, they have it for SAP in this example. And then they walk through their, I'm not going to go through all this, but they walk through their data principles and what their thought process is in solving this problem. And as Shabari pointed out, they're analyzing what's always been done. And now they're saying, okay, how do we do this differently and give everyone what they need, right? And to not need to hire a Deloitte or another consulting company to come actually get it done. And so they talk through the SAP specific version. And then I wanted to just show really quickly the business outcomes, right? Like at the end of the day, when you're selling in enterprise sales, what are you selling to an IT team or a CEO or CIO? Increased speed and efficiency, integrated technical functionality, and critical transparency and security. So it's secure. It gives me better decision outcomes. It makes me more efficient to lower costs. All of a sudden, you're talking all these things that a CFO likes to hear, right? And they can prove it based on their product. So they talk about all the different connectors they have and what they're able to do in SAP, the key features. And then I just wanted to go to the actual cost savings here. And this is a good workflow. If you're more technical, this breaks it down in English of, okay, we're going to understand data required for the workflows and analysis. We're going to extract the data from what you have in your ERP and CRM. We're going to harmonize it together on the platform, integrate the data to offer all the end users in your different departments and business have in a readable, digestible format. End users analyze and operation the data for value generation decision making. So instead of going from months and years, now to hours and days. That's what you're paying for. And Chris, you explained it, right? You lived that.
The other thing is when it comes to a lot of these ERPs and everything else, even though sometimes we'd like to think that one enterprise operates one ERP, that's not really the case. So some companies, they have multiple ERPs depending on which department they have. Accounting could be running some different software. Another department could be doing another one. Another department has another thing. So everyone can have multiple ERPs. But here's the thing, when you have multiple ERPs, and let's say you're in C-suite, now you're looking at 3 different screens with 3 different things, and you're trying to operationalize a decision while looking at 3 different screens. That's not workable. You want everything to be consolidated into one. So that's the way that I would say, especially with companies that are always doing M&A, if you're, let's say, taking over another company and they have a different ERP suite, what are you going to do? Tomorrow morning, have them change their ERP suite, spend all this money to change everything out? No, you're going to have to figure out a way to integrate what they're already doing, what you're already doing, put it together, and eventually when the costs become a little bit more manageable, you can have them change to another to the ERP that you want them to change to, right? So it's almost like, hey, this is the bridge between not just 1 or 2 different things, but like a whole bunch of different things, combine them together and be able to make decisions. So I would say the benefit of this is you don't need 3 screens anymore. You just need 1 screen where you log in. You have one thing that you're working in, one desktop that shows you all the information, not the BS thing that we have to do right now, which is have data here from all your historical stuff and then log into another product that shows you what you can do, another product where you're actually putting in orders. No, now everything is consolidated, one screen, go right into what you need to do to make that decision, approve, reject, done.
Yeah, actually, Chris, your point, just to piggyback on it, it's actually more true than people would think, because that part where you were saying with the acquisition or merger, like I lived that 3 times. And the thing is, when it comes up to the C-suite part, when you actually use multiple systems, right? What they actually want, like they're not looking at the screen for any ERP, right? They're getting these reports, and there's massive like teams of people that sit on each ERP and actually pull these reports. And then there's another team that sits there and consolidates this and moves it up the stream. So that's like, it's more true than ever, really. But then something like HyperAuto, actually, instead of them saying, let's move on to one or streamline the ERP, or let's not do, they don't have to do any of that. They could just onboard HyperAuto, and they can completely stay existing the way they are, and then they can run everything through HyperAuto. So even if they're of the type to not want to do anything to change, you can still onboard this thing, and it'll collate pretty much everything and then move it upstream the way the way it needs to be, like more efficiently.
And you can see it right on the screen right now. You're looking at SAP Business Suite. You see third-party applications. You see Oracle. There are probably 3 different companies with 3 different codes out there, right? No one wants to have 3 windows open at the same time trying to make a decision. We want to just look at everything in one screen, make a decision.
I was going to get to that. Let's hold on. Jake, I know you were trying to say something. I want to hear your parts on HyperAuto, and then we're going to talk about what's on my screen here.
No, yeah. I was just thinking, just imagining myself at work. I mean, like, I don't know how many times I've had several different enterprise software programs up, and I'm at a very low level technically. I'm on the ground trying to, identify like fire safety deficiencies. But when I want to record that in something, or I want to submit a work order in this program and pull it up here and somehow communicate that to other departments, I've got so many tabs open. I'm talking to a lot of different people just to do very simple things, and to see something that can, pull it together is really, really interesting.
Yeah, this is it. Like you described it, Chris. Like, this is from their deck, from their white paper, and this is every company. Like, you look here, okay, I got my Excel files, I got my SAP, got my Oracle, got my third-party apps, which is tons, especially if they're SaaS-based. And then I got decision-making all in these little silos that no one's talking, no one's communicating in through the organization. So projects and decisions are getting made, and then outcomes are not being made actual to what needs to happen. And everyone's looking at each other and thinking, why didn't we get the outcome we wanted, right? But if you operate off of a platform that ties everything together so everyone can see the digital twin and the predictive outcomes and communicate, I would have to imagine this improves corporate communication heavily on all levels, right? So it literally makes the decision process more effective. And then I just wanted to share quickly before we jump to a new topic of just case studies, right? Not every company wants to actually be named because they want that competitive advantage as long as their competitors don't use Palantir. It says here, a Fortune 100 consumer goods company deployed Palantir platforms to respond to COVID-related disruptions within days. Palantir software harmonized more than 7 legacy ERP systems into a unified environment. Using an out-of-the-box application, teams immediately began to optimize cost of goods sold and production, resulting in tens of millions of estimated annual savings. Like, it's crazy, right? You're not getting a Microsoft product. You're not getting a Google product that does it like that quick, right? And then you can see another one, 300 ERP data sets saving $57 million in working capital. The list goes on and on. There's a whole bunch of these examples. And then they actually just announced, this probably is where we can wrap it up. You can build your own product on top of Foundry, right? That's what makes it so nice, is that you know what you need in your developers if you're a large enterprise. But if you can bring all the data in to make that app more effective, or a super app, you look at what they did with Airbus and Skywise and the millions of dollars. I mean, Skywise is now an industry standard product across airlines, right? You now look at what they're doing with Wejo. You look at what they're doing with this new one here is called Athenia. That is going to be the project name or the platform software on Foundry for all of the shipyards in South Korea to improve the supply chain process completely. And they actually want to create by 2030 a smart supply chain shipyard to automate all these processes so we don't have this type of issue again. And so that's just one example. They also have some different ones on the actually, I might be, let me just make sure I'm not, okay, I'm mixing up the Merck one. Sorry.
I was about to say, I was like, Athenia, I think is the Merck Germany semiconductor thing, not that the other one is the Hyundai one.
There's so many ones, but okay, so I got too confused, and see, mistakes happen, people, if you're watching. So with Merck is the one with the semiconductor supply chains with Athenia to fix the supply chain issues around semiconductors, and that's what they're working on. But it's a product on Foundry for semiconductor supply chain. And then the smart shipyards, I don't know if I got the. Did I? Yeah, here we go.
Here
Future
it
of
is.
Shipyard. It's called Future of Shipyard. They're basically going to do it with Hyundai, and they want a smart shipyard by 2030. They already, what was interesting too is I know we don't see net revenue expansion rates when everyone wants to see what the NRR is for Palantir. But look at what you see here is that this is another example of a current customer expanding in money and contracts. So Doosan Infrastructure, Infracore, it was already a customer of Palantir's in 2019. We saw the case study, they're saving millions of dollars. Then they go up to their parent company and now they're with looking at different departments and now doing different projects. That just shows you the flexibility and the scale that you guys talked about earlier. And customers are saying, okay, here's more millions of dollars. I want better decisions here on this part of my business or this, sector. So that gives me a lot of confidence. Even, we're sitting at $16 a share, but it's a long hold for me. It's definitely by far my number one spot as far as stocks.
Yeah, Dom, actually, like those two things right there. I think those are I reviewed them recently, like the what's it called? Athenia one I looked at just not too long ago. It's funny because if you just break that down, you're like again, this clearly shows that most people sorry, okay, no, this clearly shows that most people are like looking at it the wrong way, right? This isn't going to be like this hyperscaling growth product, right? Because if you look at the partnerships they're doing, it's a semiconductor arm of like a huge multinational company, and then like a shipping company that does both of them equally important in terms of supply chain. But the thing is, both of these softwares will like the impact long term is unheard of. Part of the problem that I think what people can't wrap their head around is Microsoft, Oracle, all these like SAP. Why do you think people don't understand why they make their money? Half of the reason they make their money is because teams at certain companies just don't want to move the data out. That process of moving the data out is actually like a really underrated, under, valued, under talked about, whatever you want to call it, issue. I'm telling you, like most of the places I've been at, they're like, oh, unfortunately, we're using Salesforce. Well, why don't you just use something else? Oh no, then we have to like,
Too
hire
hard.
like 6 new people. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and like, why don't you do it then? And it's like, okay, right? You know what I mean? It's like there's the problem. It's more like, don't worry about it. It works, whatever, right? So people
It's
aren't
good
looking
enough.
for that. Yeah, they're not looking for that extra efficiency until they see it. Then it's going to be like a floodgate, right? So this isn't something where it's a aha moment. It's more so like a slow bleed, and then boom, all of a sudden people will start jumping into these things, right? Because one, they don't have to switch. You can be agnostic. They can just totally go to it and still be efficient. Two, once they finally figure out that Palantir has a method to actually extract their data if they so wanted to, they can work with your external data source, but they can also pull it out and move it into their own system, whatever the case is, right? Once they figure out that they can do that, this whole problem of, oh, we're only paying SAP because we have to keep our data there and we don't want to move it, because part of it because we spent 6 months onboarding the software, right? So it's very, yeah, anyway, but it's like a long term thing.
Okay, there's one more point that I want Jake to talk about on Palantir. I know we are going to switch topics, but I think this kind of really brings everything home. Um, with how they are getting into all these different industries and their business model, 40 different industries, right? And their business model, I want you to walk users through this business model because it's so unique opposed to any other SaaS-based company. And Shabari just hit the nail on the head as you won't see the full residual until years and years to come of what true exponential impact this will have for the margins and the revenues. Can you explain the acquire, expand, and scale fit model that they have, and what makes that so unique?
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I had those definitions in front of me because they define acquire, expand, and scale in their 10Qs, in their annual quarterly filings. And acquire basically means that um, man, I think it's they've recognized revenue, but they have not been.
It's certain
Uh,
thresholds. So
yeah, so,
yeah,
positive contribution margin.
yeah.
They haven't reached positive contribution margin, and then Expand is positive contribution margin, but it's under a certain cap, like $100,000. And then scale is anything beyond that. And what they've shown quarter over quarter is that the time from acquire to that next expand to the next scale is shortening. It's getting compressed. But the curve on the end of it keeps growing. As you can see from their top 20 customers, every quarter, it's like 2 more million from the average of their top 20. And it's just this stair step up. And if that's an indicator, these large companies that, they need things to work. They're some of them, they're very technologically literate. Like when I was very surprised by their acquisition of John Deere as a customer, because they're no Luddite. That is a really forward thinking company. And if these large Fortune 500 companies and customers keep scaling like this, that's a really good indicator for what the long tail is for all of these others that they're acquiring. They're gonna, if they can, and the big question is acquiring more customers. It's that sales team. It's giving the right pitch. It's embracing that new atmosphere of mix between sales and the engineers. That new culture. If they can do that.
What did you say their commercial growth was? I think you gave us a number just recently.
Their U.S. commercial growth I have it here. Let me
You said it was close to almost 100% year over year, right?
Yeah, U.S. commercial growth in Q4 of 20 was 107%, 72% in Q1 2021, 90% in Q2 2021, and Q3 was 103%.
So they're doing it, right? They're doing it.
Yeah.
So what we all four measure here, this company, on that piece. So do we think they're only going to do 30% revenue growth for the next 5 years?
No way.
Conservatively, that's that's probably the baseline that they set themselves up.
The bottom of the barrel of what I'm calling here. And you can write on your YouTube channel, on my channel, if I'm crazy or my prediction is trash. That's fine. It's all good. The beauty of investing is it's personal, right? If you don't like it, short the stock, sell the stock. But what I'm telling you with this business model and what Jake just explained to us is that there is no other company willing to lose money for the first two parts of that customer interaction with the acquire and scale phase, because their product is so good that they know they will make up all of that money and margin tenfold on the scale phase.
I think the only reason why that they've set themselves at 30% is because you have to take into consideration that a good chunk of their revenue right now is still coming from the government, right? That business, unfortunately, the way that it works is that it's like a feast or a famine sometimes, where when you're working with the government, if you get a huge contract, you land a huge contract like the Army Vantage one, it's $800 million contract, but you may not see that kind of contract for another 6 months, right? So the thing is, if you start to recognize revenue too quickly, that what happens is the follow-up year you may not recognize, and now you get something called you have like lumpy effects, where now you're kind of like seeing lumpiness in quarter to quarter. So instead it's like, hey, listen, we know on a base level we can grow at 30%, even if there's one quarter where the government sector does not give us a ton of contracts. And that typically happens in Q3 because that's when the budgeting happens in the military side. So I think that I don't want to say not hyper growth that we saw in Q3, but we saw in Q1 and Q2 is probably directly related to some of those effects. I can tell you based on a lot of the research I'm doing on the government side, because I'm interested to see what kind of revenue to expect. They're going to be generating a lot of money. It's not just, I think a lot of times we think that, we're all excited about the commercial side, but even among the government side, they're doing really, really well. They're integrating with all sorts of things. The technology that they have is on the cutting edge of anything that's out there. And the military, I'm former Army. I can tell you right now, there are so many use cases that have gone unfulfilled for a long time, because the way that contractors worked back in the day was they would come to you with a proposal, right? And they say, well, you know what, we can do this for you. And so they would allocate $1 billion to it, and then they would build a product. But guess what? If they were done early, it wasn't like they're going to give you any money back. If anything, it was in your interest to extend out that contract, because then you could say, well, we said it was going to cost $1 billion, but it's actually going to cost 2. So then they go and they get the money because they don't want a half finished product. They put another $1 billion. Palantir said, screw that nonsense. We're going to create a product and we'll sell you the product, right? Right now, all these other defense contractors have been making money off of the government that way. Trust me, they are not happy. They are not happy at all. But at the end of the day, guess what? If Palantir can provide a service that's really good, that that they don't have to pay for, it saves the taxpayers money. I think we have a lot to see Palantir, but I think don't underestimate the growth in Gotham. Yes, there may be times where quarter over quarter you may not see as much growth because of the way that the military contracting structure works, and sometimes politics can also get involved in there. But overall, I think 30% is a bare minimum. I think we're definitely going to see more than 30%.
And just to close the Palantir discussion, just for all those out there saying, well, they're not profitable, I understand their stock-based compensation upsets you, but they are free cash flow positive, and they are doubling that for the last 3 quarters. So if they really cared about being profitable, they could turn it on like that. So if you're a long-term holder, you really want them focused on keeping the talent there, executing to the customer growth, and keep innovating. Because if we think that they're only going to just have Apollo, Gotham, and Foundry for the next 20 years, I highly doubt that.